Hi, everyone. Deborah here, and I am joined today by Diane Barrows, who is one of the fiber artists who is involved in Shave 'em to Save 'em. In case you're not familiar with Shave 'em to Save 'em, it is a challenge that we put out there for fiber artists to use wool from the sheep on our conservation priority list. And Diane is one of those people who decided to take up that challenge. And today she's going to talk a little bit about her fiber journey, why she decided to join, what she's doing, and all that kind of good stuff. Hi, Diane.
Hi. Hi, everyone.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
This is really fun. I'm really going to have a good time doing this.
Yeah. So it's great that it's so wonderful that people can get together like this. Even before people were at home all the time. It's been a lot of fun to be able to get together with people and chat online.
You get to
So
meet people you've never would never have a chance to meet otherwise. Yeah.
exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about your personal fiber journey and how you got started in fiber arts?
Yeah, sure. I have been sewing and knitting and crocheting since I was a little girl. And my mom taught me most everything. She was an excellent seamstress, made all of our costumes and things like that when we were kids. And then she taught me to knit. And I've probably been knitting close to 55 years now. So that's a lot of knitting. And I have to say, though, that I was not an excellent knitter. I was a follow the pattern knitter. And I would find something that I liked. And like kids, you find a pattern like a McCall's pattern or something like that, and you want the picture to match what your mom is making you. And that's how I was as a knitter. If it was gray yarn, I wanted gray yarn. So I would knit things that I could find the yarn in my local yarn store. And I didn't understand about yarn substitution. And to be honest with you, I did not even realize that there were different breeds of sheep that produced very different fiber. So it was a real eye opener when I started spinning and found out that there are all kinds of sheep and all kinds of opportunities and things that you can do with different types of wool. So I've been knitting a long time, but I was an ignorant knitter, a blissfully ignorant knitter.
And then how did you get involved in Shave 'em to Save 'em?
Well, it kind of came from my desire to learn to spin. And the way that all came about was that when we would go to our local fair, there was a group from our local guild who would sit in the breezeway and out in the open, and they would spin the entire fair. And they would do a sheep to shawl. So they would start this at Lamb Show. And in our area, we have a separate lamb show from fair. There are too many lambs, and the time of year is such that they can't auction all of those animals at the same time at the end of fair. So all of the market sheep get auctioned in June and at a one-day lamb show. So at that lamb show, our guild would start preparing that fiber that then they would spin at the fair. And I would stand there and watch these spinners and just be mesmerized by what they were doing. And having used fiber and fiber tools and having the affinity for that for my whole life, something really resonated with me. And my kids also, especially my boys, I have 3 boys and 2 girls, and the boys love the mechanics of the spinning wheel. So we would hang out and watch them. And I thought, someday when I grow up, I'm going to learn to spin. So a few years ago, my last child got married, and we are empty nesters now. And I thought, I'm going to learn to spin. So I started with a spindle and just found some fiber and started spinning. And my sister helped me a lot. She was a spinner. And then I got a little Ashford traditional wheel off of Craigslist and started spinning with that. And next thing you know, I was so hooked that I know that being an excellent spinner is what I want to be. So my sister sent me information about the Shave 'em to Save 'em program, and lo and behold, here you are having no idea whatsoever that all of these different sheep even exist. And suddenly you have all kinds of choices at your fingertips. So I started ordering wool, and that's just how it got started. And now I'm going to spin all those breeds, and it's wonderful. I'm having a really fun time doing it.
You've already gotten quite a lot of them done already, haven't you?
Yes, I only have 3 left to acquire, and I only have just a couple of them left to spin, and I've spun almost everything else. I have a whole basket here beside me of all kinds of yarns that I've spun. So it's wonderful having a visual representation of these different fibers, because when you mention, for instance, if you said Dorset horn, I know exactly what that feels like. I can picture my skein. I can remember. I can tactily think about what that fiber feels like and what it might be used for.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to show us some of your favorites that you've spun so far?
Oh, sure. That one that I just held up, I did a Dorset horn. This is some that I actually used avocado skins to dye. And I've been saving avocado peels and the pits. This was mostly pits in this one. And it's funny because my kids are all grown, but they looked in the freezer one day looking for ice, and they said, "Mom, what is this?" And I said, "I'm saving avocado pits." And I heard one of them say, "Look out, guys, Mom's becoming a hippie." And then Clune Forest was a really fun one. That's so squishy and lovely. And I think also the long wools. So I have all of these long wools that I've done, and they're just dreamy, dreamy, dreamy. And one thing I like about having it in a skein like this is one way you can tell how the yarn is going to behave when it's knitted or crocheted is you can hold this skein sideways. And if you hold on to the end of it and it droops, you know that this is going to be a drapey yarn. If you hold onto it and it stays in the same shape, you know that that's going to be a spongier, bouncier yarn. And it's just helpful to have it be like that. You can test out the drape just while it's still in a skein like that. So those are a couple of my favorites. I actually also really like Blackwash Mountain, and I've some of these breeds I have ordered extra, and then I've blended them. So one of my favorite blends was something that I learned about at the Black Sheep Gathering last year. I took a class from Michael Kelson, and he had a special blend that had quite a bit of Dorset horn in it. And so he told us what the percentages were, and I came home and ordered all of those, used some of my Shave 'em to Save 'em fibers, and I realized I cannot get credit for the finished yarn that way, but I loved it so much, I just used it and made my own blend. And so I replicated what he had done in the class. So then I had to order some more. So some of these, I've got my little passport here, and some I've ordered from several different places. You know, I've got notes to myself and which ones were which, because I wanted to see how different preps and different people's flocks would react differently when they were processed.
That's a really great idea, because it's going to vary a little bit from sheep to sheep sometimes, but it also definitely people have noticed a difference from even flock to flock.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and then also the care of the animal. I think because of the nature of this program, people are really interested in caring for their animals well. But depending on geography and whether or not this animal's been coated, and if you have 200, you might not be able to coat them, but if you have 4, you might be coating them. All kinds of things. I've had a really wide range of fibers that I've been trying to get a lot of raw, and so that I can process it completely myself. And some of them have been really neat surprises. So
yeah,
that's a lot of fun. The other thing that really helped me when I started spinning is I got a hold of J.C. Boggs Faulkner, her book, 51 Yarns to Spin Before You Cast Off. So incorporating the 2 different programs where you've got this list of things that you're supposed to make and another list of what you're supposed to use, and then combining those 2, I'm getting double mileage on some of these and spinning some things that were a little beyond my comfort zone. and finding out which fibers are best for which applications, and finding out, had some interesting people reach out to me and send me some wool just to see if I could do something with it. And that's been a lot of fun to see if I can rescue some of the things that might not have been, people would have deemed it to not be rescuable. So if you
That's
tell me I can't do it, I'm probably going to show you that I can.
I understand that. And I'm the kind of person who always wants to know why I can't do it. And I'm
Mhm.
like, well, they didn't say why I can't do that. So I'm going to try it and see what happens.
Mhm.
And sometimes that turns out to be a good idea, but not always.
Not always, not always. And I've had a couple of disappointments. Early on in the program, and probably going to talk about this in a minute, but I'll jump in here. Early on, fiber providers and shepherds suddenly had a way to market to an audience that they didn't even know was out there. So some of the things that we ordered were from flocks that had been shorn, and maybe the wool had gone in a wool pool, or maybe it had gone in a bag in the barn. I certainly know lots of folks who just store the wool and don't do anything with it. We come from a sheepy area, so there are lots of big flocks here. And my kids have participated in stomping wool into the big bags to get it ready for the wool pool. But I think there was a lack of communication between providers and spinners. Now, when you knit something, you have an expectation that your yarn that you're using is going to be similar to something that you could go to your yarn store and purchase. But when you get fiber, there's such a huge range of how that fiber could be presented to you that at the very beginning, providers had the wool, and so they would just send what they had. And in some cases, people just didn't know what a spinner would want to see. So there got to be a little bit of just frustration. And I noticed that on the Facebook page for Shave 'em to Save 'em, people were frustrated. And I'm a peacemaker, so I jumped in and I said, okay, maybe people don't know. Maybe these people have sheep and they don't know how it can be used. They know somebody might want it, but they don't know what for, or how it's used, or how it's spun, or how people spin wool, how companies spin wool. They just don't know. So let's get together and let's tell a fiber provider what your dream fiber would look like. And that's going to be different for every spinner. Some people don't care if it's really, really rustic. Some people don't care if it behaves like every other fiber of that particular type. Maybe the staple length is a little bit short. Maybe they're going to card it and they don't care. But maybe they want something exquisite. But the fiber provider doesn't know that. They don't know what exquisite is, and they don't know what low VM means. To them, it's got a little hay in it, big deal. To a spinner, a little bit of hay is a big deal, and you might really want something different. So we started a couple of threads that spinners were able to tell what their dream fiber was like, and then the providers and the shepherds got to tell what their day was like and what their circumstances were at their farm and what they were facing. And something that I learned from that I'd never even thought about before was that not all sheep can be coated. It might be breed related, or it might be area related. And maybe you live in a place that it would be detrimental to your sheep if you coated them. Or maybe you have 200 and you can't coat 200 sheep. And these are things that just never occurred to me before. Remember, I was the girl who didn't even know that there were different breeds of sheep that had different types of wool. Wool was wool. And the yarn store, especially the big box stores, just say 100% wool, and you don't know what it is. So I didn't know that premium wool for a mill was white with no gray in it. Well, I like gray wool. I like those gray hairs. I like those mottled looks. So it's just all a learning experience. Anyway, the conversation got going back and forth, and there was a lot more understanding. And what we said was just be honest. If you and it wasn't that people were intentionally dishonest, they didn't know what to say to show their honesty. So if you had extra VM or your staple length was extra short or something, like, just say so. Just tell it like it is, and let the customer, let that fiber artist figure out whether or not they can put up with those things, or they don't care, or they're excited about it. And that really helped quite a bit. And after that, people knew what questions to ask, like, so are there a lot of second cuts in this? And I actually got some wool from one of the providers that said, I noticed lots of second cuts when I was packaging this up, so I sent you a bunch extra. And I really appreciated that. I didn't care because I was going to comb out, but I appreciated the thought to put in extra to make up the difference. So
That's awesome.
mm-hmm.
So I know you've done a lot of reading and stuff to
Mm-hmm.
educate yourself about spinning and just fiber in general. What are some of the books that you have found especially helpful?
Well, some of the obvious ones, something that I started taking with me was The Field Guide to Fleece. And I have the companion larger book too, but it's not something you can throw in your bag or your purse. So the very first thing I did was look up all of these breeds, everything that I could find in these books, to start gaining a frame of reference. Because remember, I was working through the 51 yarns too. So when it said you're going to spin something worsted and it's going to be a fine yarn, well, I didn't know what that was at the beginning. So I would look up whatever it was in here and find out that, Shetland might qualify for what I was trying to do. So then as I purchased wool, I would fit it into my 51 yarns category as well. So that was really helpful. And I have pretty much read the full Fleece and Fiber source book cover to cover. I love it. I just could spend all day in there. Another one is The Spinner's Book of Fleece. Really, really appreciated that. I appreciate making a swatch and seeing how that swatch is going to perform. So when I'm spinning a wool, I'll do a 2-ply and I'll do a 3-ply, and I'll do some lace with the 2-ply, and I'll do a swatch of cables or something with the 3-ply, and see how it behaves. Because someone can tell you that this wouldn't hold up well for lace, but maybe I like that lace. Maybe I'm making something for a baby that needs to be not necessarily so drapey like for a shawl, but it might be a baby blanket, and it might be just perfect for that. So you can make educated decisions about what you're going to use to knit, and then spin toward that. So that was really fun. Another thing that I find super helpful is Ply Magazine, and Spin-Off too. But Ply Magazine, something I particularly appreciate right now are all of Amy Menko's articles in there about the different breeds, and you pick up something that you can add to your frame of reference every time you read through. And I go back to some of these and read them again, and I think, I remember reading that. I love that. I love that information. And as you build this frame of reference, you have more places to hang the new information that you have. And pretty soon it all starts making sense. So I've kind of been on a crash course, and even though I haven't been spinning a long time, I feel like I've been spinning a very long time, because I get it. I just get it, and I love it. So I love finding out what these wools want to be.
And I understand that you also have joined a local guild. Can you tell us a little bit about why you did that and how it's helped you in your fiber journey?
Sure. I think I had always known that the guild was there, but it was more of a weaving guild, and I didn't realize how many spinners were in that weaving guild. So the first couple of times I went to meetings, I felt kind of like a fish out of water, because there were so many weavers there, and I was not going to become a weaver. And then little by little you find out that a good portion of those weavers, and some of whom are just, they're excellent weavers, just beautiful work. Lots of rug weavers, but then some really fine weaving, and people who've had exhibits and things. It's just spectacular. And you find out that these are weavers who spin, and they're self-proclaimed weavers who spin. And then we have another group that are spinners who weave. and finding out the difference, and their self-admitted differences, where some of them just spin to spin and then see what the yarn is and then decide what to do with it. And then we have a couple who are project oriented, so they'll choose a pattern and they will spin with the idea of having their yarn be what they can use for that particular pattern. So we have some couple of technical spinners, and we have some that don't care and they just want to spin, and maybe they had careers that were really demanding and they're just spinning for retirement and they love it. So there's a little difference with everybody. So I taught a workshop not long ago, and it's amazing how much fun it can be to turn on some light bulbs for people, and people have been spinning a long time who didn't understand some really basic things. So that's part of the fun for me, is turning on those light bulbs. And then I've had a lot of light bulbs of my own go off as people are describing their weaving and how they spun, or what the requirement was for that weaving. So my mantra for a long time was, I'm not going to be a weaver, I'm not going to be a weaver, not going to be a weaver. And a couple months ago, I acquired 2 looms. So I guess I'm going to be a weaver. You can't use all this wool fast enough. You spin and spin and spin, and you can't knit fast enough to use it. So I'm going to be doing some weaving. So they've been a really great resource. They have a really big library, and they have a lot of equipment too. So that's been really fun. And they've given me carte blanche to talk about 51 yarns to spin and shave them to save them, and present that to the public.
Awesome. That's great. Thanks for helping us to promote the program.
Yes, really fun.
I know you've been really active in the Facebook group, and one of the things that was great was back in, I don't know, I think it was maybe last fall, you asked me what I thought of the idea of having breed-specific albums on the page, which I thought was an excellent idea, and you just dove right in there and created those. So I think that's really nice. That way people can see very quickly, without having to search through the whole page, that they can see very quickly what kind of projects have been done with each one.
Well, what I realized was that things were getting lost. You post your project and there's a lot of initial enthusiasm, but then as it gets further down in the feed, you can't find it. So I thought it would be fun if you were going to spin tunis, to go see what other people used, what they did to spin their tunis, or what they made with it. Or you're trying to see how the lesser long wool behaved, and so it'd be really nice to go and see those. The only disadvantage of those is that if someone posts directly in one of those albums, it doesn't get the prominence that it might get if they post it directly to the feed. So my suggestion would be to just do it in both places, and put it up there on the feed so lots of people can see it, and then also post it in the album, because that way it's there forever and people can go back and look. But I've noticed some of the people have posted things and there are no responses, and it's not that they're not lovely, people are just not noticing them. What people may not know is that I get notified every single time somebody posts anything to any album, because I created those albums. So I get to see that. And I get to see comments, and it notifies me, which I kind of ignore sometimes because there's a lot of them. But I think it would be really smart when people are posting if they would do both. And I realize that's kind of a pain, but in the long run, when you go to look back, it's really fun to see all the creative things that people are doing with those.
Oops. Yep, that's absolutely right. Somebody asked me that the other day. They're like, should I post this individually or on the album? And I said both, so that for the same reason.
Yeah, because some of the things that people are making are just treasures. They're just
Mhm.
beautiful. And then you've got some new spinners too that need some thumbs up and some likes and some encouragement to do a good job. Another really helpful thing for people would be to tell, if you are a spinner, um, to tell how you spun that yarn, because someone looking for inspiration might not know that this makes a really great two ply, or that it can be spun long draw, or whatever your specifications were. So the more information you can give, the more of a treat it is for someone to go and look at that and get some ideas. And then you've got a lot of felting going on too, and some beautiful yarns. And it's great to be able to mention where you got it as well. Um, Another thing I really want to give people props for is sometimes you get something and you're not thrilled. And they've been very good about sharing their difficulties without naming any names, because people don't, providers don't always know, and they don't always know that something is in there. For instance, the one that I got, she had already packaged some things up for people and then found the second cuts, and she was horrified. So I appreciate when people say this one was a struggle. I've got one right now that was from an early purchase, and I'm only spinning it to get through it and say that I did it. And it is a mess. That person is not a provider anymore. Um, and There was an odd circumstance. So it's nothing bad. It's just the way it was. And um, I'm not going to name the person because it's irrelevant. It's water under the bridge, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot, and I learned a lot of 3 cups of little tiny chaff and seeds coming out of my 4 ounces. It was just amazing, and there's still probably a cup in there, and I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to spin it. So
Wow.
yeah, yeah, 4 ounces barely qualifies because an ounce and a half was stuff.
My goodness.
Yeah, yeah. But it's okay. It's okay. And you know what? Maybe the donation of your money toward that, maybe they'll get some better nutrition. Maybe they'll get some coats. Maybe they'll figure out a way to do it. And if enough people just give them direct feedback, positive, enforcement for things, maybe they'll make some improvements. And that's the whole idea. That's the point. So,
Right.
yeah.
So what plans do you have for the future with in your fiber life and with Shave 'em to Save 'em?
Well, some of these breeds I'm going to go back and do again. I've just fallen in love with some, and some things I already knew. I knew that I liked Shetland. I knew I liked Cotswold. Um, but a couple of other were, Florida Cracker was just a lovely surprise to me. And I would like to get enough of a couple of these fibers to do an entire sweater. So I'd like to do that. I've done a little bit of dyeing. I don't want to become a dyer, but if it's something I can get my hands on really easily, I'll dye up a little bit. I'm also doing some blending, which is really fun. As I mentioned, that Dorset horn Dorset, whichever way people say it, that was a big surprise to me, and I am going to be using that again in the future. But I'm also going to be doing some education, and my goal, fiber-wise, is to become an excellent spinner. I want to be an excellent spinner. So I'm going to be working toward my Certificate of Excellence with the Hand Weavers Guild of America. And it'll take me a couple of years probably to do that. But I'll be using a couple of these breeds, and we have to start with raw fiber. So I'm going to use a couple of them in my finished skeins that I submit. And then my goal eventually is to teach. I would like to teach at our local guild, and I do a lot of little short helping sorts of things. We have a spinning and knitting group, and it's just fun to be able to come along aside somebody who's struggling a little bit and show them how to make an adjustment on their wheel, or just how they're holding their hands, or whatever it happens to be, and watch them get so excited because now suddenly they can do something that 5 minutes ago they were struggling with. So that's kind of where I want to go with that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That sounds like so much fun. So, thank you so much for joining us today. Is there one final thought that you'd like to leave everyone with?
I would say jump in. If you are on the fence about whether or not to become a provider, do it. Do it. There are lots of people out there who would love to get their hands on some of the wool that you have. And if you are a spinner or a knitter or a crocheter or a felting artist and you're wondering about it, it's $15 and it's money well spent. And the thing is, you're handing your purchase money directly to somebody who can use it. You're not going through a middleman, and the money is not being eaten up by that middle person. Another suggestion that I would have is if you're a provider and you are on Etsy, to put the SE to SE on your listing, because that's an easy way for people to search and find what you have to sell. And that's helped a lot. Just have that little short, it's just 5 little characters, and that really helps. But if you're on the fence about it, do it. And even if you don't get through them all, maybe you'll find one that you love and you decide that's what you want to spin forever and ever. That's great.
Great. Thank you. That is a really good note to end on. Thanks so much for joining everyone today. And it's been a lot of fun chatting with you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And good luck, everybody. Have fun.
Thanks. Bye. See you guys again
Bye.
later.